How's it going, everyone? It's Ben Falcon's Media Corner back again with a brand new video for today. And to continue on with my review of The Last of Us series, of course, I'm here to review episode 3. Now, episode 3 was directed by Pedro, Hoar, and in this episode, we saw what happened after the events of the last episode, in which where we saw Tess sacrificing herself. And so, in this episode, we see Joel and Ellie continuing on their journey to get to the Fireflies. And so, what ends up happening is that they end up traveling to Bill's home area. So in which they're about to get some more supplies, and even his truck to basically help them to get to the Fireflies. But not only is this episode just about these two characters, we see Bill's backstory and how he met up with Frank, and how these two characters start to form a loving relationship together that ends up being a tragedy. So that's pretty much the synopsis for episode 3 of The Last of Us. Now, the last 2 episodes, which I have seen, I thought were absolute perfection. Like, the first episode, I thought was a perfect start-up. And the second episode, I thought was a beautiful episode, but it was also really suspenseful at the same time. And so, for this episode, going into it, I just recently watched this episode just this afternoon. And after watching this whole thing, I gotta say, this is also another perfection here as well, just like the last 2 episodes. I really adored episode 3 of The Last of Us. But I can also say as well, this is probably going to be the most emotional episode that I've ever seen for a TV show in years here. Now, in the game, we understood that Bill had a partner named Frank, but we were never introduced to that character in the game. But for this episode, it was played out so differently here than the game here, because in this episode, we get to see a flashback of Bill and Frank's relationship, like how they first met and how these two characters start to form a loving relationship together. Like, at the very start, we understood the characterization of Bill, in which where he's a hardened survivor, and we see him getting a lot of supplies to basically make a lot of traps for his home, so he can basically protect himself from anything dangerous out there. And then what ends up happening later on, we see a guy falling into one of Bill's traps, and it ends up being Frank. And then we see Bill taking care of him, and then later on we see these two characters start to form a loving relationship. And the way this episode plays it all out here was so beautiful here. Like, I really adored the whole love story between Bill and Frank. Like, I really cared for these characters so much here. And as for the performances, like Nick Offerman, who plays Bill, he truly looks like him in the games, and I thought his performance in this episode was absolutely fantastic here. Like, I've never seen Nick Offerman do anything like this before, but I would love to see him do more things like this in the future here, because he really kicked out of the park for his performance as Bill in this episode here. And Murray Bartlett as Frank, he was also amazing here as well. And both of these actors have a really good yet strong chemistry together here in this episode here. And once we get to the end of their relationship, the way it was played out here was so heartbreaking here, like, and yet so tragic here. Like, I couldn't stop crying my eyes out once we got to the end of the whole relationship between Bill and Frank and all that, because like I said, I really cared for these characters so much here. But again, I was just in floods of tears after seeing the whole ending of their relationship and all that. But after we saw that, we see the whole continuation of Joel and Ellie's journey to get to the Fireflies. And we get to see them get to Bill's home and get more supplies. And we even see that Bill left a letter and all that. And the whole letter that we see in this episode here was also really heartbreaking as well, just like with the whole ending of Bill and Frank's relationship as well. And Pedro, Pascal and Bella Ramsay as Joel and Ellie, they continue to do so well for their performances here, just like the last 2 episodes as well. And this episode is also well paced as well and all that. And it's also a bit longer than the last one, because the last episode was 52 minutes. This episode is an hour and 15 minutes, and I thought it was really well paced and all that, especially once we get to the whole flashback of Bill and Frank's relationship and all that. And it's also directed really well done here by Peter Hoar, who directed this episode here, especially the final shot in this episode, which I really, really love the last shot of the episode. I thought he did a fantastic job directing that final moment of that episode here. And there's not even a single flaw I could pick out with this episode here, other than I can definitely say that episode 3 of The Last of Us was just also perfection as well, just like the last 2 episodes. But like I said, this is just generally got to be the most emotional episode that I've seen so far for this show here, as well as for, like, I can also say as well, it's definitely one of the most heartbreaking episodes I've ever seen for a TV show in years here. So that's pretty much all I have to say about The Last of Us episode 3. I'm gonna give The Last of Us episode 3 5 out of 5. yeah, like I said, this episode was also perfection as well, just like the last 2 episodes. And there was not even a single aspect with this episode that really bugged me or anything like that. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching for my review of The Last of Us Episode 3. And let me know what you think of this episode if you have seen this already or if you just recently checked it out. Did you absolutely love it or did you not really appreciate this one at all, really? As always, thank you guys so much for watching. And this has been Falcon's Media Corner signing off.